Happy New Year!
Happy New Year.
Who is for that? You? Oh, I like your taste. Let's see, we got another key.
I'm a Glenn Miller, Tommy Dorsey fan.
What did you want?
In the mood?
In the mood, well, I must be some rhythm.
Yes, there is. Oh, yes, there's a lot of them there.
Oh, there's your voices.
Now there is a rhythm. It's got
Yeah, there's some rhythm. Where did I see that?
where it,
What's that? Uh-oh. Got a whole band there. What happened? What did I touch?
There you go.
Oh, okay. I must have cut it off. I'm really good at this. Pretty good.
Get out the way.
Well, I liked having you in it too.
Oh, I take those. All right. What else?
We do that, yeah, twilight time, we can do, day in the life of the fool.
Well, I'm blue. Well,
Okay,
so-
about,
As time goes by.
I do it in E flat, if there's a different key that's better for you, I can move it.
It's okay. I can play by ear. Generally figure out by the second time around.
Exactly, you gotta get here. Now it,
It's better.
I'm gonna record you.
Oh, you recording?
Yes.
You're all right, you're all right, you're all right.
Swing so tonight, oh, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride one horse open sleigh. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride one horse open
I understand it's politically incorrect now to say gay apparel.
That's a lie. Oh, I got the day that happened,
Oh, yeah?
My son just had such a ball that night.
You got that hot spot stuff the dog is scratching.
She said, she said, you're
Put some
sitting there, you're
special
listening.
thing.
I know about 200 tunes, but they always aren't the
You
same
don't have any
tunes that
fleas,
you
you
have.
just got dry skin,
You're
you
like
keep
another
scratching.
bottle.
I've got all the good ones out.
Yeah, they have.
I didn't like it.
Anyway.
That's great, right? Most of the Russia. Listen to that tuba player.
It's Jerry Rabinowitz on piano.
Russian singer on
Bravo, bravo! That's very good.
Are you just getting ready to sing? You're warming up now.
He was sitting over there warming up. He started oofing.
Oh, I didn't know. No, you can't. Better tell me when I'm gonna record
You're good.
so I can play better. Let's see what else I got here. getting ready for discharge. They were discharging people by the number that they have, the classification. If you had overseas service, why you would get a higher number and you would get discharged first, earlier. Well, anyhow, I was taking the place of a band leader in Tucson who was discharged, and they had about a half a band left because they had discharged some of the members too, and my band was dissolved, and I was floating around, so they sent me to Tucson to take over the band, this small band. On the way over, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Have you ever seen the big hill that you get before you go into town?
Yes.
Yep.
It's huge. It's, I don't know, 10 miles long.
Yeah.
You're going downhill all the time. And then you get into the desert. Well, I had Mary Jo, my oldest daughter, was just about 3 months old at that time. To make a long story short, I broke down in the desert, 104 degrees,
Ouch.
and the baby was on bottles, and we had a bottle. I remember we put it on the hood of the car to warm it up. There was no problem. But I had to analyze it. Just quit. I got on the right side of the road. Cars going by on a straightaway, 70 miles an hour. And I got out. I thought easily somebody would stop me. I was trying to stop. Nobody stopped. I tried that for about a half hour. So I says, well, Mary, meanwhile, I had diagnosed the problem. And I said, sounds like the points might be bad. And I took it apart, looked at the thing, and sure enough, the points were flat, worn. I said, well, that's got to be it. So I took them out, and I says, Mary, I'm going to have to leave you there. Nobody would stop, but here I am with a baby. I says, I'll see if I can hitch a ride. Nobody picked me up. I must have walked 4 to 5 miles on the road in the hot sun. I was almost dead. When I saw a little shack with a gasoline pump, and there was a little store. So it was a relief. I went there, and the guy says, where you been? I said, well, I'm here now. I said, I'm in trouble. I have a wife and a baby out in the desert over there, and I had to walk all the way over here. I says, do you have, this is what's wrong with it. I says, do you have these points? He looked at it. Yeah. He went to the shelf, got it, and gave it to me. Oh, what a relief. I said, all right, now I got to get back. So I says, well, somebody's going to stop for gasoline, and I'll hitch a ride going the opposite way. An old car that had been, where the rumble seat was taken out, they made a makeshift truck out of the thing. And so I says to the guy, I says, can I hitch a ride for you? I said, I explained what my wife, he didn't believe me, and he thought I was going to rob him, and he was very cautious. Please, I says, I implore you. I said, I have to. It's a case of life or death. I said, I got to get back to her, and get that car going and get to civilization. So, well, he's all right, but you'll have to stand up on a running board outside. So I did that, and we chucked away, and after a long time, we were going about 15 to 20 miles an hour. That's all it would go, that car. So, when we got close, I said, all right. I said, can you slow down a little bit? He slowed down just a little bit. I said, well, thank you very much. And I jumped up, and I walked across, put the things in there, the points in, got it, and started right up. Oh, thank God, I said so. And we took off, and we got to Tucson eventually after a few hours, and then I signed in on headquarters, and they were expecting me, and they had already made out not a discharge, but my grandmother died, and they were going to give me a special
Leave.
leave of absence, you know. So I thought all over. I said, well, gee, that was a few days ago. She's buried and gone. I was, you know, nothing I could do. We were very close with my grandmother. So I didn't go, and we stayed there, and in Tucson, Arizona. That was my stay, the beginning of it. And we did small things, combination. We entertained the troops that were there. That was the place where the B-29s were stored,
They still are.
and I
Yep.
imagine they would be.
There's fields and fields of them. If you can drive by, and there's just
Yeah.
fields of planes. I got another video of that.
Well, we had B-29s in Lance, Nebraska, where I was.
B-29 just crashed a couple months ago.
Yeah.
So that's the end of that story. I think we used up all. This only touches the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. Always had a lot of close calls, and I always came out. And Paul Such, who was my partner in the business for the first 20 years, he had a saying about me that he says, I carry Jesus Christ in my back pocket. He says, all the things I get involved in, close quarters, and you know, I always come out ahead. And it's true. I was nothing I wouldn't do for $1. Hey, I had 9 kids. After I'm sure, you know, after I was discharged, ran a business and everything. I played nights, playing 6 nights a week. Besides what we could do in a bit, did you know, in the store, but we gradually built an inventory, and you've never seen that store. And,
Yeah. The one in New York?
The Poughkeepsie.
Poughkeepsie.
I've taken them up to the Main Street
heck,
store.
I was there a couple weeks ago, or a year ago. I was there more recently than she was.
Well, that corner store, there were 20,000 cars when I bought that building, and my partner didn't want to me to buy it, and because it was too much of a thing. It was a $50,000 purchase, and
I bet you could sell it for
that was a lot of money.
20 times that now.
Yeah. But the building is worth $1 million right now.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, if you could get it right now, things are slow. But it turned out all right. It was the best move I ever made. And then he lost his son. Paul lost his son, and he wanted to come down to Florida. But he was going to wait until he sent his kid to through college. He had just graduated from high school, and his nose was running. I remember his father sent him to the doctor. He had bought him a nice little car, and he says, "Go see what's wrong with you." And the doctor called him after the visit, and he says, "I hate to tell you this, Mr. Such." He says, "But your son has no more than 6 months to live." That was lymphatic leukemia he had gotten. So that changed his
Priorities.
desire to stay in business, and so we talked it over, and he wanted to retire, and I bought him out. Then in a way it was nice because we set a price, inflation continued up, and what I was paying him, he you know, wasn't doing quite the job that he wanted to in retirement. So he started cleaning pools. He had a pool home, and he knew a lot about chemicals. And he worked for a couple of years over there. I guess he was making a decent salary. But I do know that since I didn't have to split every dollar that came in the store, you know, the profit, and I did more business in the first 5 years, and I made more money in 5 years than I did the previous 20 years. So things were humming a little bit better. At one time I had about 4 kids in college at the same time.
Oof. Imagine having 4 weddings at the same time.
Oh, weddings! Oh my gosh, I sure had big times too in those days.
Mom was telling me that you actually had someone buy a piano all the way from California, and you had to drive it cross country once.
Did yeah?
How'd that go?
Well, actually, this girl was when we had a kid orchestra of 15, 16 years old. You have a picture somewhere over here of the and we had a nice little organized band, and we used to go out and play for $2 a night, and that was good money for us for 15-year-olds. Now, what was I talking about?
Oh, someone bought a piano.
Oh, the piano. You
Yeah.
asked me about the piano. Well, this girl was the pianist in the orchestra, and she married what would you call him? The head person in Hyde Park, and so then they got divorced, and she had bought this great big organ, over $5,000 at that time. It was big, full pellet, full keyboards and everything. And she asked me to sell it. And I said, okay, I'll try it, Irma. I'll try to do it. I kept on the floor for 6 months, and I couldn't get her price that she wanted for it. So she says, I've been looking at the new models of the Thomas organs. She says, I don't like them as much as I like my own. Is there any way that you could ship this thing out to me? She says, I said, Irma, by the time I have a box made for that and everything, and the cost of shipping and everything, it cost me $1,000 or more. And I says, for that, I could take it. I just said, I could take it to you, deliver it to you. She called. Would you do that? Well, I says, yeah, I think I would, but it'd have to be on my terms and the time. I said, I can't do it in the wintertime. I'm afraid of roads and everything. Earliest would be I would take a chance in March. She said, all right, I'd be glad to do that. I'll give you the cash. I told her it had to be a cash deal. I didn't want anything. And I says, we'll charge it up to pleasure and business and pleasure. So she did, and I got my sister Kay and my brother-in-law Larry. I had my Ford station, this wagon that I had. So everything went fine. I even had a chair that like I have over here, and in the back of the thing we took turns sleeping. My brother-in-law would drive and I would drive. Anyhow, it was a nice trip, and that's how we got to go to San Francisco and delivered it. Everything went according to.
Take 80 across? Did you take 80 across?
I don't really recall. Possibly.
Do you know what states you went through?
Hmm?
Did you go through like Wyoming?
Oh yeah.
Okay, then that would be 80.
Yeah. Well, Grandpa's been to pretty much every state, but Alaska and Hawaii
Yes.
on their trips.
That's right.
Yeah.
Then I could talk about my my traveling with the trailers that I buy. That's what I was trying to think of. I went through three trailers and 2 motorhomes. But the trailer, 28-foot Nashua, pulled it, and I had a special hookup made for my car to pull it and everything. Well, I don't want to get into that because that was such an experience. The only thing I could say is that I had adventure. I was so used to traveling because of the Army experience that I wanted to continue my traveling. And so I couldn't afford it. I think I had about 7 kids at that time, and that was the most eventful thing because everybody thought I was crazy to pull. This trailer was not made for it like the new ones. It was made they had wheels on, but it was made for stationary places in the parks, trailer parks. So I took a chance on that, and it was so wonderful. The people out west, they saw me with a family. I'd ask them, I'd pull in these trailer parks, which were not like today. And I'd ask them if I could stay overnight. Do you have a place? And they always did. They said, yeah, sure. And they see me with a bunch of kids and everything. I said, well, what are you going to charge me? A lot of them would say, just go ahead, park it over there, and connect. You got the water and your sewer, everything. You know, make yourself at home. And at the most, they charged me maybe $1. I don't think it was ridiculous. The point I want to make, I'll conclude this interview, is that we were gone 5 weeks with Yellowstone Park, and we saw all the country, all the kids, you know, were with me, seeing most of the states. And but for 5 weeks on the road, I kept track of my expenses. For the whole 5 weeks, my total cost of expenditure for overnight stays was $25.
Wow. You can't do that in a night anymore. You can't.
Not for one night, but for the whole, 5 weeks.
Filling up the car just to come down here from Savannah cost us $60.
Yeah. So it was, adventure. We went to San Antonio, visited my sister who lived there.
Matt and I stopped by last time we came through.
At San Antonio?
We stayed over in San Antonio for a couple days at Christine's house, who was his next door neighbor, and we went and we visited family.
Oh,
so, yeah.
I think I remember something about that. Well, we were very close. Unfortunately, she's very sick. She's got bad heart. She's 4 years younger than I. And right now, then I have Jane, my sister Jane. She's younger than me by 2 years. We're all 2 years apart. And Jane is not well. She's losing it too. And, Alzheimer, such as I'm beginning to feel the effects of that too. And then there's my sister Jessie. She's the more remarkable one. She's 4 years older than me. She's 97 years old. And I'll be 93 in next week or so. And but she doesn't take any medicine, not a thing. She aspirin once in a while. And I just talked to Mary Jo, who visited her last week, my oldest daughter, and she says that she's still pretty spry. She lives in what do they call it, the step down part in a house. It's not all on one floor. She has to go downstairs in the utility room. She climbs those stairs at her age, and like a young lady. And she's got all her buttons, sharp as could be. So that's the story of my life. Put that on for the future.
All right. We'll hold on to that. If you want to do more later, we'll tape more.
Well, it's up to you if you want. If I can think of an episode, a lot of things.
Whatever you want to give me, I'm happy to have it.
Yeah. Well, it's a short story would be that my brakes gave out.
Okay.
I want to be more explicit. I have to review it in my mind, but it was a suicidal thing.
Oh.
And I came through that with living colors. I had to make minute by minute decisions. There was a gorge going down. The road was cut out of a mountain, and coming up the mountain. This happened in Georgia. there
So
was
up near Atlanta?
well, in the middle of the state there. I forgot the name of the places, but there was on the bottom there was a gorge and a lookout point on top of the mountain. Here I am starting to tell you the story. All right, try to be brief. Maybe you can help me. So
I wasn't there.
you were there.
No, I wasn't. How? She might have been little.
And anyhow, there was a lookout point. They had binoculars there. You put 10 cents and you could see and you look down the gorge like 1,000 feet deep. The river looked like a little creek, just like the Grand Canyon type of thing. And so we stopped and we all took a turn looking at the scenery, and then we started to go down in the hills. It was very steep, and I remember Andrew saying, "Dad," he must have been 10 years old, so he says, "Dad, you better downshift this thing." And I said, "Yeah, okay." So I put on my brakes to slow it down a bit, and I could tell the brakes are hot, and they weren't holding. I tried to shift it down. I shifted, but nothing happened. I kept on gaining speed. I'm going down the hill, and coming up was vacation time. It was like going up the opposite directions, bumper to bumper cars on this road. As I said, it was carved out of the mountain, all rocks on this side. So, what to do? I couldn't stop it, and I had a car maybe an eighth of a mile ahead of me, and I was fast approaching him. I said, "I don't know. There's nothing I could do to stay on the road, and if I have to see an opening, I'll crash into the mountain on the side over there and scrape it and come to a stop. I don't care about the costs involved or anything." But there wasn't. I had no choice but to stay on. Just as we were about to hit the car in front of us, and the road took a turn for a left, and on the right there was a little dirt road, and it wasn't a drop anymore. That we had some land over there, and I made a quick decision to make a right turn. We were going maybe 35, 40 miles an hour. I took that bus just hugged the road, and I went in the forest on the left side of the road, knocked down a lot of small trees and everything, and finally got back on the dirt road, and we're going up a little dirt road to the top. It was like a little plateau, and when I got to the top, it was paved on the thing. I couldn't believe it, but there was 2 homes built. We passed by that time I must have slowed down to about 12 to 15 miles an hour, and we passed the first house, and then we were fast approaching the second house, and then all of us, being high in the motorhome, I could see the road abruptly ended, and there was no guardrails or anything, and it was like 1,000 feet deep. This house was built on the edge of that road, both of those homes, for the view that it had. Somebody had a quirk that he wanted to be. So anyhow, what choice did I have? I says, "All right, hold on, everybody." I said, "I'll buy him a new house." I says, "Let's go."
Oh no!
So I went to the corner. It was a brick house, and my bumper. I had a bumper that was held by, 2 pieces of iron that held it. And what I did was I went in the corner with the bricks, and it slowed me down. It cushioned me down, but in so doing, I had an indentation in this thick bumper of mine, about 14 inches deep, a V down, but it was enough to cushion my stop, and finally it stopped. I'd broken some bricks on the house. Nobody home, by the way, either one. So we thanked the Lord. I had a bucket and I filled it up with water because we carry our own water, and I splashed them on the brakes, and over there, boy, and you see the sizzling and and we stayed there about a half hour, cooled down. I tested the brakes, going very slowly, and it was okay. I said, okay, now what are we going to do? I says, should we go back the hill or should we continue on? By this time, I says, I know what to do. I'll put it in first gear and leave it there. And so I remember Paige saying, "No, Daddy, no, we don't want to go. We don't want to go. Let's go back." I said, "But don't you realize, well, if we go back," I says, "then we have to go down on the other side." And I says, "We're near. I think we're right near the end of it. And there was a little town as you get down, right, and we went right through it. But anyhow, we went down, and everything turned out all right. We continued on, and I had recently bought that, and I was not acquainted with the gear shifting proposition. I thought when you put it in second gear or first gear that it would automatically stop, but no, you have to stop first, then put it in the gear, then it would hold. So it was an educating thing, but it was a close call, and I remember I had the kids staying by the door. I says, there was somebody, she had a friend of hers on the trip, Paige did, and so I says, when I tell you to jump, don't hesitate, just jump up. I was going to try to, rather that they just jump out of it and scratch themselves and save their lives.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't necessary. All that took place. That's just one of the many things that happened to me that it all came out all right.
Action.
All right, this is Joseph Vincitor, 93 years old, next week, remembering some highlights of my crazy life, and an awful lot transpired with my Army service. I must tell you that I was an accomplished musician. I would call myself. I'm a Juilliard person as part of my background, and I had the best instruction, and I played in nightclubs 6 nights a week. That was before the Army. I was one of the first ones in Poughkeepsie who was had the distinction of being forced in the Army. You know, they were if you're 18 or over, you were Roosevelt anticipated that we would be involved in war, and our military had dilapidated since World War I, and it was not up to date, and so they were doing a lot of catch up, and so I was one of them. And the idea is to conscripted is the word for me for 1 year. We were supposed to go in for 1 year, and then go on the reserve list for when they needed us. Well, that didn't happen that way. I mean, I served 11 months, and we were ready to be discharged in January, and it was December the 7th, a day that would live in infamy for Roosevelt. And I was on my way home. I had borrowed my father's car. came up on a 3-day pass, and I had accumulated a year's worth of, clothes and things, and my father says, take the car and put everything in the car and come home. So I was on the way down in New Jersey when I had the radio on, when I heard Pearl Harbor incident. I says, well, that's it. Meanwhile, I was engaged to get married as soon as I got discharged, so I changed the aspect of everything, and so I decided, with Mary's consent, of course, that we would speed it up, and she agreed that we should get married. I said, if I'm going overseas, I want to go either as a married man where I could behave accordingly, or single, because it's a war. I don't know when I'm going to come home. You're only human yourself, and so am I. And so she agreed to that. So I got back to the base. Of course, everything was restricted after that. All leaves were canceled, and I remember that Christmas. It was the worst Christmas I think I've ever had. I remember a bunch of us fellas, and I had my car down there, so I went into town and we all bought a pint of whiskey and went back to the barracks, and we had a sort of a dismal party. I remember the next day, they had a beautiful dinner, Christmas dinner ready for us, and I couldn't eat. I was so sick, from the night before. But that's just a little incident on the thing. So, so it was that we started our career in the Army. So they had our IQ taken and everything, and they figured that I was high enough to join the medics. They were trying to make a medical technician out of me. I said, well, I'm a musician. I said, can you get in the band? No, you'd be of more help to the Army. And by that time, I had learned to take instructions without questioning. So for a couple of weeks there, I was given shots and oranges to learn how to give injections. So, but meanwhile, I found a guitar player. That was the 37th Infantry Division, the barracks next to us. And the guy played a nice little guitar. And I says, hey, come on over. And I had sent for my instruments. And so we had sessions. I know all the tunes of the day. But I'll stop right there because the point of interest was that when I went in, there was a sergeant that was in charge of us, took a dislike to me. When we stood up at Reverie in the morning and for assignments, he always gave me the worst job, like picking butts out of the the mud and cleaning garbage cans and Camp Upton it was.
You meant cigarette butts, right?
Yeah, that's what he meant.
Yep, and so anyhow, everything, when we stood up in line, he always gave me the dirtiest jobs, which I took, and so when I sent for my instruments, I had them parked under my bunker, and he came in and he says, Vincentor, what the hell are you doing? I can't even tell you the adjectives that he used. But he said, you can't keep suitcases under the thing. There's a front room. You put those goddamn things in the front. And so I said, the sergeant, I says, they're not. It's not a suitcase. They're musical instruments. Musical instruments. Yeah, I says, it's a saxophone and a clarinet. Get it out. I put it on the bed, and I opened it up. See, I says, it's a saxophone. You can play that? I says, yeah. He said, well, let me hear you play something. I said, okay, well, what do you want? And I think he says, San Antonio Rose, da 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 da. So I played it, and I still remember his face from that ugly, meanful look toward that. He started to smile, and I played that. It was, I guess it must have been seventh heaven to him. Play it again, play it again. I played it about 3 times. So that was a new relationship that existed, but it didn't last for long because we were playing on the front porch of the barracks after supper. I'd get, and we'd had nothing to do, and I was outside, and there's a trumpet player also, that Leo Constantino. He was a good trumpet player too. He was from Schenectady, New York. His name was Constantino, and I was a Vincitor, so we did everything together. And so at that particular point, we were in the same boat, and we played tunes, and everybody started. First, it was just a few people, and then we did this every night. By the end of the week, there was not just a few people, but there were hundreds of people, because the whole battalion was there on their way back from eating, and they hear music, and that was heaven to them. And they'd stop and they'd ask for requests. We'd play every one of them their requests. And so the word got around that there was a good clarinet player and a trumpet player too. And so a sergeant who was a scout, or you might say he was a sergeant of the band, he was asked to go and see what there was to it. So he heard me, and he says to me, would you like to join the band? Would I like to join the band? I said, that's the only thing I ever wanted to do since I got in the Army. Yeah. Well, you come at 9 o'clock in the morning. He says, we'll have an interview, and with the band leader, which I did. And I went through the routine. He asked me to play chromatic scales and arpeggios and everything that he asked me to do. I just was nothing to it. And he was so impressed that, okay, he says, he has 7 clarinets in the band. It was a good band. He says, you're playing first clarinet. I'll jump over 7 people playing the lead clarinet. So I took everything in stride. I went. The guy was made welcome into the band, and nobody, they could see what I could do, which was deserving of my position in that. And I immediately got a promotion from buck private, making $21 a month, $66 a month. So, first opportunity, I told I used to write to her and or call her up. I told her about it, and so she quit her job, to make a long story short. In the middle of town, she was a night supervisor. She wanted to be with me because at that particular time, I played in this band 2 years, and it was near the end of the second year. We're all straight, all ready to go overseas. In Africa, where General Patton was our general of our thing. And so the band was all set to go over. And so what happened was a telegram came into, I don't know if you've ever heard that one, you probably did. Telegram came in, or telex, or I guess they called it, and delayed Vincitor to Army School of Music for the band leaders. 6 months prior to that, I had, they were looking for new band leaders. They wanted 80 new band leaders because they were enlarging the Army. It was much before the end of the war, and they were anticipating growth. They needed 80. So I took the examination. Nobody else in the band felt qualified. It was quite a hard examination. And I called on all the resources from school and theory and arranging and everything. And it's DeLay Institute at the Army School of Music. So out of 400 that took the examination, they chose 80, and I happened to be one of them. So this story gets better because, of course, everybody was in the band elated for my good luck. They were only wishing it was they who didn't have to go overseas. So now they quickly had to get somebody to take my place, and that is the point of the story, because we worked in combination of two people. Part of our job was, in the case of a war, I mean, we had to go out with litters and pick up the wounded and everything. So they got somebody to take my place, and my partner, Bob Bozic? No, it's not that. I forget. At any rate, I have his picture over here. I always kept. He's an awful nice fellow. And they took off, to make a long story short, they took off. I went to music school and for 5 months in Washington, D.C., Army School of Music for band leaders. Very, very tough course, you might say. Beautiful experiences. Conducting the United States Army Band was what we used to practice on. And they were so receptive to all your conducting your movements. It was great. But these guys that took my place, they landed in Africa, and they were in a war zone, and sure enough, they had to go out with their litters and pick up the wounded. The guy took my place, and my regular partner got killed. And that had such a profound effect on me because, you know, I just felt that somebody up there likes me. So that was one of the highlights of the band, and then from that point on, I had 2 years of experience of playing all the good works, all the good classical works. We had a library that was, terrific. And then I was assigned my own band. We organized the band, and I slowly got people that I knew or heard of, or people who wanted to get into the band. Help from many sources, and we developed the band. We had about 45 pieces of a band by the time we got through. Playing all the dances, the big band, and we had smaller groups. We could handle about 4 or 5 jobs a night if necessary. Oh, that was the experience, and I was band leader for 2 years, the last 2 years. I was discharged from the Army because they wanted me in the Air Force. And the procedure, you're discharged from the Army, but the next moment you're enlisted in the Air Force. So whenever we go to these affairs, and when you stand up for your song that they play, I stand up for the Army, and then I stand up for the Navy, the Air Force, rather. So, but the beautiful part of the thing is, I was able, as an officer, suddenly I was making terrific money on like $160 or something like that, which was, when you figure all your other expenses that are paid for, it was a lot of money. And Mary stayed with me for the last 2 years. We lived in Indianapolis. We lived in Lyons, Nebraska, mostly. And so there is a picture of Mary and I in front of our band barracks. You think you can hold it just for a
Yeah,
second?
I'll pause it. Right, so that is?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. That's the picture of Mary and I in the barracks. She came out to visit me and took a picture, one of the few pictures I have. There's some more pictures here, if you like. Here's a picture of, it's a retreat. We're having a retreat, and I was playing the Star Spangled Banner and all that. I was with the band. Here's another picture of the, I don't know if it's the same one. No, I guess not. These are two different. Just a few of them. I've got thousands of pictures of my lifestyle, and we're working. You're going to get a whole bunch of them. So I'll never die in this world. So, it's just a little short story of my life as it was. Got discharged, and I broke down in the desert. I think I told
Yeah,
you
you
that.
told me that one.
already.
Yeah.
So we did some great work. An interesting thing that I was allowed to do. The general of the base was having a name band play at the officers' club for a big dance that they had, and he wanted my band, my orchestra, to play half hour on and off. We exchanged with the big band, but they required a grand piano. This was in the morning of a Saturday that we were playing. He calls me in the office, and he says, "You're the music man around here, Mr. Vincitor." I was a Mr. Vincitor, that's what they call me. And I want a grand piano here tonight for the orchestra. Alliance, Nebraska is in the middle of nowhere. It's out in Nebraska, in the western part. I said, General, the nearest place where I could even dream of going for a piano would be Denver, Colorado. I says, and that's about 250 miles away. How's that going to be possible? Got it all figured out. Gave me a requisition, an order to buy a piano, and he says, "You got a plane is waiting over on the airport over there. Just go to the office and show them this." So I went down and the dispatcher, and I says, I gotta have a piano here by tonight. And I says, he sent me down here to get a C-47 cargo plane, and I says to Denver. It was the major who was signed to me to drive the thing. They put it down as a training mission, on the thing. So I got on the plane, and the guy was young major, crazy, and we flew over the plains in Nebraska at around 300 miles an hour, I would say, 250, 300 miles an hour. But he groundhogged on the ground like a car.
Mm-hmm.
He was driving in the deserts over there, and then you'd see telephone lines on a country road, and the plane would go higher. He had to go up in the air over it and then go down again. And this was for 250 miles. He was crazy, and he did. I never saw the ground go so fast in my life, because you look out the window, it's like you're on a road almost. So anyhow, we got to Denver, and I got, there was an army car there ready for me, and it was suggested I go to Knights and Campbell. I'll never forget the great big department store, about 12 stories high. And I go in there, and I said, "Where's your grand piano?" He's on the eighth floor, I think he said. So I went up, and salesman over there, I says, now I says, I've got about $1,000 to spend. I want to get a grand piano, a good used piano, and I says, well, have you got anything? And he showed me a piano. I forgot the name of it now. And anyhow, I tried it out in good shape. But I says, all right, I'll buy this piano on one condition, that you tune it up right now the best you can, and deliver it to the airport. I got an airplane waiting for the grand piano. He scratched his head. He said, "You got it." So I made the sale here. I waited for a while, and we got back on the airplane, and I showed him how to handle the piano, and on the airplane we tied it down, and we got there, and perhaps an hour, something like that, an hour and a half, and set it up, and sure enough, the piano was there for that night. That was quite a thing. There's so many things I could tell you about it. One of the experiences we had was we were colonels. It was a colonel at the time says to me, "Mr. Visitor, this was in the morning. They were at Fort Robinson, South Dakota. Was a place where they trained attack dogs, and the mission, the broadcast is about how they train them and everything." And he asked me in the morning. He said, "I want you to have background music ready. With their interview, they're going to talk a lot about the dogs, but there'll be times when you'll have to play some martial music, as a background." And we were always ready for that sort of thing. And so I said, "Okay." But I said, "How are we going to get there?" I said, "There's no airport on there." He said, "Oh, yes, there is now." He says, I was part of the Troop Carrier Command with the gliders. These gliders had little bulldozers on it. The bigger ones had the bigger ones, and they crash land them, and they make airplane fields out of nothing. And so they dropped the small ones and took care of the small brush, and then they landed it. This was done the day before, and they made a path out of it and wiped out all the debris of trees, small brush, and so forth. So it's 2 planes. It took 2 planes to carry all the band and the instruments and everything. So I was in the second plane, and I saw the first one land, and I looked out, and it created so much dust over there. I didn't know how the heck they could even see where they landed, but he landed right, and we got out and so forth. And we did our job. At nighttime, at the Officers Club, another colonel that was stationed at that point says, you're the band leader, he says, would you like to hear this German band that we have here as prisoner? It was a prisoner of war camp for Germans. And I says, yeah. I said, I had no idea what it was all about, but he assigned a German prisoner of war, was a lawyer, spoke English as an interpreter, and he says, you just go with him and they'll open the gates for you. And so they opened it. It was an outside theater that they had built, the Germans had built themselves, a big stage on the bottom, thousands of troops, thousands of German prisoners were there. And so I entered gate after gate. Scrutiny was terrific. They were really prisoners. You couldn't high fences, barbed wire fences of 15 feet high or more, all around the compound. So anyhow, they opened it up and the door, into this big stadium, outside stadium. And he said, Achtung! And as he did, thousands of troops, of German troops, got up, and we walked down the aisle with him, and he seated me in the front. And I says, I never had so many people acknowledge, me in that manner. But he got me right in the front row where the stage was. And here was this band, the most terrific band I have ever heard. About 125 pieces, I would say. And what I learned later was that they were told that they were prisoners of war. They were surrounded, and they were told to get their instruments and the music and everything, and equipment, considered some of the prisoners, and the United States got them and brought them to the United States into this war, in this camp. So they were given this concert. As I said, they were absolutely terrific. When you get clarinets, like maybe 20, 25 clarinets playing in unison, out of spec, of out of tuneness, and with the baritones playing and thing, it was just it's just impossible to compare. It was that good. So when I remember when it was all over, I was just elated. I went back to the Orchestra Club, and the colonel's wife came up to me. Well, what did you think of the band? I says, it is the most terrific thing. I said, what a shame, I says, that they're prisoners, that we can't use them for our own morale and play. And I was the wrong thing to say. She stuck her nose off as if I was a traitor, just because they were German. I said, I'm sorry, I don't care what the German or the Japanese or anything. Music is music. They are absolutely fantastic. So she probably told her husband, but I expected a reprimand for my enthusiasm. It never came. He probably just took it for his wife. Didn't know what she was talking about. Probably agreed with me. It did, because after that we played another broadcast nationwide at KOA in Denver with the band. We had a special function, and I had my orchestra play, and he was so pleased he gave us an extra 3-day pass and so forth. Well, but it was an experience that I went through. The band was absolutely terrific, and music is music. And so I conclude. Thank you.
Remember a couple years ago you had come out here, and I guess it was Ginger or my dad that you were shopping for a clarinet or getting one tuned up, and you came to a local music store.
Yeah.
And I remember that the guy down here was being a little bit of a brat and said, "Well, I used to."
Where you got your?
I think it was Ginger, but yeah.
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 No, I mean the place was where you got the.
Oh,
$1,000.
Dave's. Yeah.
Dave
yeah.
Litz.
So it was Litz.
Yeah. He was in business then. He was. No, it wasn't he that was there. It was somebody. That
Yeah, it was someone else. But.
And I wanted to buy this clarinet and he wanted, I wanted to test it out. He gave me a clarinet that didn't work. My pads were leaking. I could see they were leaking. I didn't know you knew about that. But it was just one of those things. And I had my mouthpiece, and I played a little bit. And he, see, I knew what I was talking about. I says, clarinet, this is a beginner. I says, it's all you can do. There's a lot of obstacles you have to overcome in the beginning on a clarinet. And when you give him a clarinet that doesn't work, I says, he's doomed right from the day one. So he put a couple of pads on the thing, and it was playable all right. We bought the clarinet, I remember. At least it was in good shape. Yeah, it was just, I didn't know you were aware of that.
Oh no, I was down here for that. That kind of I got a giggle out of it because I remember they came home and I guess it was Dad telling the story, and he says that he made why I was in the army band and you shot right back. Well, I was the conductor of the army band. And we just thought that was funny because he was like, oh okay.
Well, it, I can't dismiss the 2 years that I had playing clarinet and in a band. It was a different phase of my life. I had been playing an awful lot of jazz, but it turned out to be quite a blessing when I was playing. And I knew the jazz part, and then I got the experience of playing all these good works and become good classical player. So I could do both, and I became valuable. Then I played in the dance orchestra, and they needed the tenor sax player, which I played, and so it was.
I remember at one time, it was either you or Mom telling me the story about Juilliard and how I guess you started on saxophone and at first they didn't want to take you for clarinet. So.
Well, I had that in a story book that I told you. But you want me to tell you?
Yeah,
about
go ahead.
that?
Yeah.
Well, all right. I was supposedly considered a child prodigy. I say that looking back as if I were a different person, but well, it goes back to my parents who were from the overseas. They were Italians, immigrants, and it was typical for. They had a sense of responsibility for all their children, and the male people were the breadwinners, considered breadwinners, and they had to have a trade. And when I was 10 years old, my mother knew a fellow in a barber shop and asked if I could go there and learn the trade and make myself useful. The idea was to keep me off the streets and not get in trouble and learn a trade. So I did obeying instructions, and I was there for 2-3 months. And my duties were sweep up the hair when they get their hair cut, and clean the spittoons. And those days there was a lot of they chew tobacco and they'd sit in a chair when they get a haircut, and it spit mostly miss the. My job was to clean them at nighttime, go in the back and clean them. But every time I cleaned them, just about every time I cleaned them, I'd get sick on the thing. And I told my mother when she learned that, she said, "Oh, what am I doing?" She said, "You're finished with that." So she pulled me out of that, and then she went to the Bellises. They were like cousins, and he opened up a music store. He was a fine violinist, studied in New York, and he wanted to get started in a music store. And selling sheet music, instruments, and player pianos that you pump. And so our job was to dust the counters and just clean up and do whatever. I hung around, and my job was. He says, "I'll give you a saxophone lesson." I got a C melody with a saxophone. It's a rarity today. They don't use it anymore, but it was a C melody. It enabled you to play off of sheet music in concert pitch without transposing. Anyhow, I got started on that, and I took it like a duck takes to water. And first thing you know, he had me playing more and more difficult music, and I started playing some very difficult saxophone solos. And he was just getting started in the business, and he'd use me as an example of what he could do with a student. And when I used to play amateur shows a great deal, and I always won first prize all that time. There was no contest because I was good. I didn't realize at that time how good I was. It was so good that I have trouble playing that music today, if I in my later years. But nevertheless, I played soul after soul, and he'd say you have to memorize the soul thing by next week. Give me a week to do it. He'd show me how to take 4 measures at a time, memorize it, then add 4 measures and play both of them together and stretch it out and that sort of thing. And I got the principle of, and I was able to memorize all these solos. And so I got so I could read music and everything. So my mother, I knew that when I went to high school, what I wanted to do all the time was music. For they ask you what you want to do. I wanted music. Music was my life. That's what I wanted to do. So my band leader had graduated from Eastman School of Music, and he suggested that. And Juilliard was second on his list. But I had to rule out Eastman School. Eastman had a better reputation at that time than Juilliard. Turned around later on. But nevertheless, I went down there to Juilliard and asked them in the office if I could get an education in music and everything. What instrument do you play? I said, I play saxophone. And she says, my dear boy, don't you know we only teach legitimate instruments, not inventions? And so I said, but I can read music quite well. You have to know your instrument before you come down. Well, I came home disappointed, and my mother saw that I was terribly disappointed. She said, well, why don't you tell me you want to study clarinet then? She says, when we go to these dances, baptisms, and they have bands or weddings, the saxophone player usually plays the clarinet too. I said, yeah, I didn't think about that, Mom. I says, okay. So I went, the next day I went down there again, and she recognized me, you again, type of thing. I said, yeah. I says, my mother suggested that I know you teach clarinet. I says, she wants me to study clarinet. Do you play the clarinet? I said, no. And she laughed. She said, don't you know you have to be proficient in the first place to be admitted here? But I says, but I can read music. And I said, if only you give me a chance, I says, I could show you what I could do. Well, she started to mellow up a little bit, and so I tell you what, she says, you just tell, I'm going to take you to the clarinet teacher, Mr. Williams, Jan Williams, and you just tell him the same thing you told me. And so I did, and I made my points with him, and he says, well, it's not our policy to do that, but all right, I'll give you 3 months to shape up or ship out. It's okay. I said, you tell me what to do, and I'll go do it. And I started taking lessons with him, and he gave me the works. Very, very difficult things to do. Playing sustained tones. You got to stop playing the saxophone with a vibrato, because clarinet is a legitimate instrument. You have to play straight tone with no vibrato. I said, okay. I did that for a whole year, and so 3 months went by. By that time, he was so satisfied with what I was doing, we became good friends, and I mean exceptionally good friends, because he had a home, a place in Woodstock, New York, and he owned half the mountain over there, so he says, when it came to the summertime, there was a 4-month elapsation, just like any college, you have 4 months off, and then he says, you can't just quit and come back in 4 months. He said, you got to continue. You got such a good start. This was at the end of 6 months, and because he had told me at that time, he says, Joe, he says, I have to tell you this. He says, I've taught a lot of students. He says, but you've done more in 6 months, he says, than anybody did 2 years, he says. I remember those specifics on the thing. Of course, it made me feel good and important, and I didn't want to let him down. I practiced up to 8 hours a day when I was studying with him. And then I studied with him in the summertime also, when he has, I said, well, now I got scholarship money taking care of most of my expenses at Juilliard. I says, but I don't know if I can afford it. He says, well, I said, what do you get? He says, well, I get $10 a lesson. I says, Mr. Weir, I'd love to do it, but I just can't afford it. I know my parents can't either. Well, damn it, he said, can you afford 5? Yeah, I said, 5, I think I could work that out, all right. Okay. So money never came into question again. I was paying this $5. I think, I don't remember, I don't think half the time he took it. But because I'd go up there, and I stayed 2-3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And he was working at the music hall at the time. And he wanted to keep himself in shape. We played duets under the trees outside for an hour or two, keep himself in good shape. And I stayed 2-3 days almost every week up there with him. So it was quite a thing. And I made a big hit with him. I credit it with him when you have to have reference when you get in the Army, especially when I got to be I need a recommendation for Army Music School band leaders. I'm sure he gave me a great thing. I might have helped too. So everything in my life was music. I just steered away in my life, and so many things that happened of interest. And there was another episode. Are you about finished?
No, we can.
Just a short antidote on something not pertaining to music entirely.
And okay, go.
We were on maneuvers and anticipating a war scene, you know. And I was a band leader in charge of my band, complete charge of my band. I mean, I was the commanding officer. Anything I said was, solid. So we had an exercise that in conjunction with other outfits, and they were going to dynamite our compound, our headquarters. They were I found out later that they had put dynamite on the side, and we had to secure our compound with guards out in the field all around to keep anybody out of it, you know. So we had guards going crisscrossing and everything all around the compound, and this because they were telling us how to do it, you know, how to protect the thing. But I looked at what they told me to do, and I could see flaws in it. I said, anybody could come in here while a guard is going up there. There's nobody to check the other side or something of it. And so I got my sergeants together who was in charge of the guard, and I said, don't say anything to anybody, but I'm not going to fall into that trap of what they plan on doing. I said, I want to secure the thing all around our compound, and I had it so that they could see each other. All the guards could see each other. And if anybody was going to slip, they'd have to be known to the guards. Make a long story short, they caught a lieutenant whose job was to set off the dynamite, and that was going to be where they charged in and captured the band. So they captured him, and they brought him to headquarters to me.
Mhm.
I says, well, I says, Lieutenant, I says, I guess the gig is up. I says, would you consider yourself as an officer and gentleman that you're a prisoner? He said, oh, no. I says, well, then we'll have to keep you here under guard, strict guard. So it was two cots in this big tent. So you sit over there, and I had stationed the guard sergeant with a rifle, loaded rifle,
Mhm.
on him, on his, and this was about 2 o'clock in the morning, I would say. After a couple hours, the sergeant who was in charge, he was there, and he was sort of sleeping. He was beginning to sleep, gets tired, and Lieutenant, that's what he was waiting for. So he was a blanket that he had over him. When he takes the blanket, he throws it over the guard, and he starts to wrestle with me. He wanted to get a hold of his gun and do his job with the dynamite, So the guard came to pretty darn fast, and he was a pretty big, husky guy. He got the better of he got the lieutenant on the ground, threw the blanket on top of him, and with the butt of the gun, he was hitting him on the face, and he blooded his face, something awful on the thing, and so much. I got a hold of my sergeant. He was going crazy. He would have killed him, I guess. And I says, "Come on!" I said, "This is an exercise now. Let's cut it out." So I finally took the blanket over and looked at the lieutenant. Oh, blood all over his face. I said, "I'm sorry." I says, "But you asked for it." He said, "It's okay." He said, "Now, do I have your word as an officer and gentleman that this is over with now?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Yeah, okay." I said, "Okay." So that ended up. We let him go. The next morning, I was called out in the field by the general of the thing. They were discussing how they were looking for talent, people who can think on their feet, on the circumstances, and so he commented to me. He congratulated me. He says, we tell him how to do it, but here you exercise your own discretion, and you were able to think on your feet. He says, we could use men like you in the infantry. He says, as a matter of fact, there's such a thing as getting a field commission. They want to make me a second lieutenant in the artillery, I think it was. And I says, Colonel, I said, I'm perfectly happy being a musician with my band, doing what I'm doing. So he said, well, I don't blame you, but they offered me this commission on it. Thing. Who wants that? I think that's about episodes in my life that you might appreciate hearing for years and years to come.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.